The Ullswater is a fly that I use on my local lakes for fishing for wild brown trout. I tied the original back in 1995, and at that time I just called it my palmered hare's ear, because basically that's all it was. But it proved so successful in the following years that in 2001 I christened it the Ullswater. And all these years later, it's still one of the first flies I turn to when I'm setting up for a day in the lakes. Now I'm just going to fasten the thread in approximately 2 to 3 millimeters back from the eye, and then wind down the body about 2/3 of the length of the hook shank. Now I'll snip away that little bit of thread there, and then add a length of gold wire that's going to be for the rib. So I'll just lay that against the hook, fasten it in and wind down to just before the bend. And I'll just let the thread hang there while I get the dubbing for the body. This is a mix of hare's mask and pearl ice dub. You can be quite generous with the dubbing, not overly generous. You don't want the body to be too fat, but I don't mind if a few fibres of hare's mask and pearl ice dub stick out after it's dubbed, because it's going to be palmered anyway with a hackle. So I'm going to wind that dubbing back up the hook shank towards the eye and our starting point with the thread. And just a little bit more. Once we're at that point, if there's a few fibres sticking out towards the eye, just stroke them back and take a couple of turns of thread. It just clears that area up between the end of the dubbing and the hook eye, ready to take the hackle. I'm using a hackle from a rooster saddle for this, but any softish cock hackle with a fibre length of approximately 1 to 1.5 times the hook gape will do. So I'm going to fasten that in with 3 or 4 turns just to secure it. Now I'm going to take 2 turns to start and then wind down the body towards the bend of the hook in open turns. Once I've reached the bend, I'll take the wire when I can get hold of it, take a turn round the hackle to secure it, and now I can wind back up the body through the hackle in open turns, just being careful not to flatten any of those fibres as I go. And once I reach the end, I'll stroke the fibres back, wind the wire in front and take 3 or 4 wraps to secure it. Once it's secure, I'll cut the wire away, flatten that bit, snip off the hackle, and now I just want to take those fibres back out the way and take a few turns just to tidy that area up, ready to take the head hackle. I'm going to use a grey Partridge hackle for the head hackle, and I like the fibres on it to be quite long, probably about 1.5 to 2 times the gape of the hook. So I'll hold it by the tip and I stroke back the fibres at the base of the stem that I don't want, and then strip them away. Once that's done, I'll get hold of it again by the tip and stroke back the fibres that I want to use. And I like quite a few, so I guess if you took a measure, this would probably be about 7 millimeters worth of fibres. Once that's done, I'll hold the tip against the hook, take 2 or 3 wraps to hold it in place, and then cut away that tip. Once that's done, I'll just take another couple of wraps to cover the waste, and that should be it secure. Now I'll use the hackle pliers to hold it vertical, and then I'll stroke the fibres either side of the stem back towards the bend of the hook and start to wind it. And as I'm winding, I'm stroking and holding those fibres back. So just keep winding, stroke those fibres back until it's all used up. Once that's done, I'll just hold it in place while I take a wrap of thread, remove the hackle pliers and take another 2 or 3 wraps just to fasten the stub down. Now I'll remove it, stroke the fibres back, and then just take a few wraps to form the head. And once I'm happy, I'll do a whip finish and finish the fly off. Just stroke out a few of those fibres. It doesn't really matter from a fishing point of view, but for the benefit of this video, there's a couple of stray fibres there that I'll snip away before varnishing the head. That's it. Now I'll varnish the head, and that's the fly finished. So that's the Ullswater, a fly that's been in my box for over 20 years. The only slight change I've made to it in that time is adding a little bit of pearl ice dub to the Hare's mask dubbing for the body. It was primarily tied as a top dropper fly for fishing a team of 3 on our lakes, and that's the way I still fish it. Occasionally a lighter version will go on the middle dropper, or I'll tie a lighter version with less wraps of hackle to fish in a lighter wave. I also do variations, a gold bodied one, a silver bodied one, and an olive version that I call the olive Ullswater, and they all work, but the original is still the best.